Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome. We'll just wait a couple more minutes before we get started. But this is the launch celebration of the Baroness Elsa project and the first event in the Stonecroft Symposium, the Baroness Elsa project. So thank you so much for being here. So I think we'll get started. So hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Fiona Wright, and I'm the Public Programs Coordinator at the Carleton University Art Gallery. And I'm so happy to welcome you to Materiality and Embodiment Artist Conversation, the first event in the Stonecroft Symposium, the Baroness Elsa Project, a series of virtual gatherings and conversations held throughout the fall. So though we are gathering in virtual space, I want to acknowledge that QAG, like the Carleton campus and the city of Ottawa, are located on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation. So no matter where we are on Turtle Island or elsewhere in the world, we each have our own way of reflecting on and reckoning with the responsibilities to and relationships we have with this land. So I hope, though, that it always includes public acknowledgement and gratitude towards the traditional and ongoing custodians, and finding ways of supporting their work, knowledge, and rights. This event is the first time that we are gathering for QAG's new exhibition, the Baroness Elsa Project, co-curated by Heather Anderson and Irene Gamel. Oh, I'll just remind folks to mute themselves. And Heather will be giving a short introduction about the exhibition, which is now open for you to visit in person. And a huge congratulations to the artists Lena Berg, Dana Claxton, Ray Ferreira, Whit Lopez, Tagerlik Partridge, Sheila Restak, Carol Sawyer, and Cindy Stelmakowicz. And to the curators, of course, Heather and Irena. And the exhibition is a multi-sensorial pleasure to walk through, and I have seen firsthand the nuanced and expanded connections between Baroness Elsa and the 8 incredible artists that create so much curiosity in and reflection from those who have already experienced it. This exhibition, or this, so I'm just going to share my screen. This symposium is made possible with the generous gift from the Stonecroft Foundation for the Arts, which promotes education in the visual arts and fosters the public's appreciation of the visual arts. The QAG is very grateful to the Stonecroft Foundation, and we also thank Carleton University, the Canada Council for the Arts, and the Ontario Arts Council for their support. For the symposium, we've organized 3 events that expand on the broader themes of the artist's work. Today, we are exploring materiality and embodiment with Dana Claxton, Whit Lopez, Sheila Restak, and Cindy Stelmakowicz. So I will say just their very brief bios. So Dana Claxton works in film, video, and photography, investigating beauty, the body, the sociopolitical, and the spiritual. She is the department head and associate professor in the Department of Visual Art at UBC and winner of the 2020 Scotiabank Photography Award. Whit Lopez, yeah, I can. Whit Lopez is a gender nonconforming, disabled, trans performer, visual artist, scholar, and independent curator of African American and Boricua descent. Through fiber, performance, and imagery, Lopez explores hairiness, accessibility, queerness, gender identity, Blackness, and Latinidad, while also fully embracing absurdity and the macabre. And Sheila Restack lives and works in Columbus, Ohio, where she is currently Associate Professor of Photography and Video at Denison University. Restack creates photography-based multimedia installation, performance, and video works that present conceptual considerations of the body within the bewildered paradigms of maternal and familial structures. So, hi, Sheila. And Cindy Stelmachowicz is an Ottawa-based artist, curator, and professor, integrating practice and theory in meticulous and rigorous ways. Her fields of interest span visual culture, rare books, history of science and medicine, scientific artifacts, biomedicine, gender issues, and museum culture. So welcome to you all. For an order of events, Whit will be leading us in a short activity that will expand on some of these ideas of embodiment. And Heather will then moderate a conversation with Dana, Whit, Sheila, and Cindy. There is live captioning for this event. And so to turn on the live captioning, you just click the up icon on the closed caption button at the bottom of your screen and select show subtitles. You are welcome to, oh, sorry. there's the screen. So you click the up arrow of the closed caption button at the bottom of your screen, and then click show subtitles. So you're welcome to leave your camera on, though you will be muted, and I will be spotlighting the artists and Heather, and this event is being recorded. Please use the chat function to contribute to the conversation, to offer your congratulations and support to the artists and to Heather. And please remember to move and take a break from the screen when you need it. This event should take around an hour. And so now I will hand it over to Heather.
Thank you very much, Fiona, for that warm welcome and introduction. And welcome to all the artists. I want to acknowledge and echo all the acknowledgements and appreciation that Fiona extended, and really excited for everyone to be here together today. I also want to formally express my gratitude to everyone who has been an integral part of realizing the Baroness Elsa project. Heartfelt thanks to co-curator Irina Gamel, the generous lenders to the exhibition, Nauman and Mary T. Keller, Mark Kelman, Marian Elric Manley, John Cook, Joanne Haynes, and the gallery, and of course to all the artists. I also extend appreciation to the team at Film Forum, Cameron McDonald at the Literature and Cultural Research Center at Ryerson University, the staff at the Special Collections and University Archives at the University of Maryland, and the staff at the University of Milwaukee Libraries, as well as to collectors and museums who kindly provided images of Baroness Elsa's work. I also want to thank the QAG team, Sandra Dick, Patrick Lacasse, Victoria McGlinchey, Fiona Wright, Danielle Printup, research assistant Phoebe Sampe for all her work this summer, as well as Christine Hodge and Mariah Russell, who assisted in earlier stages of the project, to designer Patrick Coupet, preparator Mark Garland, photographer Justin Wanacott, and Laura Twist for her technical assistance. And QAG is also grateful for the generous support of the Joe Friday and Grant Jameson Contemporary Art Fund for this exhibition. And as Fiona is sharing some preliminary images of the exhibition, again, thanks to photographer Justin Wanacott, who was able to provide these for us. And I'm excited for all the artists to get to see the exhibition and, in these circumstances where they haven't been able to travel to Ottawa. So I know that this is like your first encounter.
Oh, I've lost. Can everyone hear Heather?
The radical art, poetry, and personage of Else von Freytag-Loringhoven, who lived from 1874 to 1927, into conversation with the work of 8 contemporary artists. The exhibition explores Baroness Freytag-Loringhoven's challenges to societal norms and experimentation with arts materials and forms as core to and in a continuum with the work of artists today. The Baroness, as she was known, was active in New York's data scene in the 1910s and 1920s. She punctured gender and societal conventions through her sexual self-expression, subversive self-fashioned dress, performative presence in the city, and revolutionary use of language and found materials in her art and poetry. Living in poverty, she sustained herself as an artist model, considering her body as an artistic medium and posing as essential to her sheer life power, as she expressed it. So there's so much more one could say about Freytag-Loringhoven, but to focus on the themes of embodiment and materiality of today's panel, I briefly cite co-curator Irina Gamel's extraordinary book, Baroness Else, Gender, Data, and Everyday Modernity, a biography. In creating her art, poetry, and performances, the Baroness absorbed, as Irina writes, the living city and inscribed that perpetually morphing city on her body, using the objects found in the gutters of New York and mirroring back New York's gutter beauty. She was a proto-punk and feminist, prefiguring performance art. To cite some of the Baroness's contemporaries, descriptions of her recorded in anecdotes and memoirs, she's remembered for shaving her head and declaring it a new love experience, and shellacking it vermilion red and other colors, wearing teaspoon earrings and postage stamps on her painted cheeks, adorning herself with a tomato can bra, celluloid shower curtain rings as bracelets, or sporting an electric bicycle taillight on the bustle of her dress as she paraded along Greenwich Village streets, sometimes with as many as 5 dogs on a gilded leash or a canary in a birdcage around her neck. As her friend Marcel Duchamp stated, the Baroness is not a futurist, she is the future. And like the Baroness, all the artists in the exhibition at once signal the present and the future. So this conversation today with artists Dana Claxton, Whit Lopez, Sheila Rees-Stack, and Cindy Stelmachowicz explores how embodiment and materiality manifest in their own practices. To reflect a little bit about what does embodiment mean, what does speaking of an embodied practice mean, and how does materiality inflect embodied practice, we can consider how the experiences of the body are foregrounded through particular material choices in art making, in different approaches to art making, how one makes visible intangible things and experiences, such as how we hold memories and our histories, how our mood manifests, our relationships with others, our culture. It is, of course, how we inhabit our body and are in touch with our own corporeality. It is also the ways that social structures and experiences shape that body. What material choices and approaches convey embodiment? What is the potential for embodied art practice to destabilize, critique, and upend dominant aesthetic and cultural norms, and to inscribe new ways of being and doing? So to get us started, Whit Lopez, welcome, Whit, will introduce and guide us through an embodiment activity that they have devised for today's event. So I'll hand it over to you, Whit.
Thanks, Heather. And thanks, Fiona. Super grateful to be here. Hi, everybody. Super grateful for the work of all the artists in the show. Like, I love it so much. I've been like, oh, it's very exciting. So I'm really glad that Heather defined embodiment. So I'm gonna spare y'all so that I won't redefine it again. But I do wanna share kind of 2 experiences in how embodiment, or like for folks who do psychology, like embodied cognition impacts the way that we experience art and art in public spaces. So I'll give y'all 2 examples. I'm gonna share my screen. Hold on, let me try to make this a full screen thing. Hold on. Okay, can you see that okay? Okay, so this beautiful sculpture, which is here on the right side of this bridge and on the left side of this bridge that are attached to a parking garage, it's called contrafuerte, which means it's a buttress, right? Like it's a word for a buttress in Spanish. So just the idea that these figures that look kind of like naked humans sculpted out of aluminum are holding up this bridge that connects this parking garage, right, over this street. Um, it's a really beautiful piece of public art that was recently put up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the United States by an artist named Miguel Horn. And it's gorgeous. I absolutely love it. When we think about embodiment, we think about, or embodied cognition, right? We think about like the environment around and how like our interactions with the environment impact the way that we experience our life and also kind of experience like our embodied feelings, you know, a lot of different things. So I'm sharing this because the location of this can impact the way you might experience it. But the art itself is super gorgeous and amazing and absolutely deserves attention. So it's in a very small street, which is pretty much like an alleyway in the middle of the city. And so I went there when I first went to see it after it was put up, I was really excited. And I got to the street and I was like, oh, this is kind of scary because I'm personally like kind of scared of like alleyways. So like I was like, ah. But I was super excited to see it. And so I got closer and then I could smell where I was. And so I don't know if you see here towards the bottom of the photo, there's a puddle with garbage in it. And then directly under the bridge is a kind of garage with dumpsters and garbage in it. And so just thinking about how like I love the work and viewing the work is amazing, but what my nose is experiencing at the same time, it stands in stark opposition to the beauty of Miguel's work. And so when I think about embodied things, it's like, how is the way my nose is experiencing this experience right now also impacting my experience with kind of the embodiment of the work. But in a slight, just kind of a slight change from that, and another experience with noses, I want to talk about experiencing a piece of outdoor work at the Barnes Foundation. So this is the Barnes, for those of you who haven't been there or seen it. This is kind of an outdoor space before you get into the actual building. So you make a left at this wall and you see this garden. You walk toward it. This is the walk up towards the entrance of the front of the museum. And so I was here one day to see a piece of work, and I was walking there in the rain. And so I don't know if you're a kind of person that likes the way wet grass smells or it smells in the middle of a warm summer rain. So I'm walking up to this and I can smell the grass and the way that I can hear the way that the water is hitting, or that the rain is hitting the grass, the ground in front of me, and the pool here to the left beyond the trees. So I'm walking down this and I get to the entrance of the museum. So as you're approaching this entrance, to the right and the left are two pools, and the pools are filled with like very round stones, which is like, you know, tactile experience if you like round, smooth stones, which I love collecting. It's just a beautiful thing to kind of look at, but also to imagine picking these up, right? And so just continuing to walk towards that entrance, towards this entrance, right? On the right-hand side of this is the actual entrance door to the museum. And on the left-hand side is, and this is a little bit difficult to make out, but it's a slab of metal with stippling on it. And the stippling is in the shape of a Baule door, which is actually one of the doors that the museum has in their possession. So at the top, you'll see some birds. There's a mask, like a human face in the middle. And then towards the bottom of it, which is actually really difficult to make out in this photo, is a two-headed crocodile. shape. So I actually put a picture of the door here so you can see it. So this is what the actual door looks like, and it's in the museum's collection. So the birds at the top, mask in the middle, two-headed crocodile at the bottom. The Baoulé are a nation of people who live in West Africa and who are currently in the country known as Côte d'Ivoire. So just walking up to that, the experience is not just the door, but it's also, right, the smell of the wet grass and the rain on the trees and hearing the rain fall on the concrete and also into the pools where the stones are, right? And so how we embody art isn't always just about the art itself or the environment that the curator makes in the space, but sometimes it's also about like what's happening in our bodies and what's happening around our bodies, and how the materiality of the space that we're in also plays a role in that, right? So it's like whether I'm experiencing stepping on garbage or experiencing stepping on wet grass, that is also contributing to how I'm experiencing the art. And whether or not I have issues with it or not, like I might not have issues with either thing, or neither one of these might impact how I experience the art. But these can also be things in how we experience the art, and how sometimes the way that these spaces are curated are purposeful decisions in helping us to decide how we experience the art. So I'd like to invite other people to talk about maybe an experience that they had, if they want, if you want, no pressure, but experience you may have had with the environment and how that helped you to embody the art, or how it impacted the way that you embodied your experience with the materials in the art or in the art space. Is that okay, Heather? Is that for folks to share?
Yeah, I would. This is Fiona speaking.
Oh, okay.
Ellen has raised her hand. Ellen, do you want to unmute and you could share?
Sure, I love this, Whit. I love this whole line of thinking or being. I'm a musician, and I did a lot of work for a while in environmental music drama, where I'd have to take my flute out in a kind of wilderness setting at dawn and play a piece of music before warming up or anything else. The idea was that people in their tents in this wilderness setting would wake up to the beautiful sound of my flute playing, which was not beautiful at dawn in cold weather. So that materiality, that sense of the mist over the water, the cold on my skin, the rubbing the sleep out of my eyes, trying to just wake up enough to even play the hard cold metal of my flute, so different from normal expectations. And all of those things were part of the music making. They informed how I listened to it, I think, and how others might, still asleep in their sleeping bags in their tents. That's mine.
Oh, I love that, Ellen. Thank you for sharing. And also, the next time you do this, can you invite me? Because that sounds really cool. Thanks for sharing. Did anyone else want to share?
Oh, I can share. It's Fiona again. I was thinking about about this prompt this week and trying to think of an example. And I went for some food at the National Gallery here in town, and we left when it was like nighttime. And the National Gallery has this big kind of glass like atrium space, and there's this incredible installation there now by Rashid Johnson that's all kind of levels of plants, and it's incredibly lit. And so I had this kind of great experience of listening to the city, like kind of behind me, all the cars and like people like finally kind of back on the streets walking around, and then looking at this work of art from the outside of the building. So that was a really cool, really cool kind of soundscape to see it. Yeah.
I love that.
Well, yeah, please do continue to think about that prompt as we go into the conversation. Whit, thank you so much.
No
I really
problem.
want to come to Philadelphia to see all this great art in the city and visit you. So yeah, so why don't Heather, I'll pass it on to you, and yeah, we'll get started.
Yeah, thanks very much, Whit. I imagine that that Elsa would have like found some treasures in that alley too. Um, so to dive right into our conversation today, again, welcome to the artists, Dana, Whit, Sheila, and Cindy. I'm really glad that you get to meet one another in this context. If audience members have any questions that arise during the conversation, I encourage you to please put them in the chat and we'll try to address them following this exchange. So to get right to it, in each of your installations, the body is foregrounded, sometimes through absence or obscured or embellished. In bold and visually striking ways, it signals a site of identity, knowledge, culture, community, gender, or trauma. This is achieved through addition to specific materials that might adorn the body or stand in for it, and that holds specific and sometimes multiple meanings. So that's some of the ways that we're looking at the intersection of embodiment and materiality today, which of course are also much in evidence in Baroness Elsa's own work. So thought we'd structure the, this discussion today by pairing like questions directed at a pair of artists along a certain theme, and then have another set of questions with two other artists. So as a first question to Dana and Whit, there are rich intersections in your respective works featured in the exhibition: the use of photographic portraiture, portraits of friends and community, the role of beading and textiles within the creation of the portrait images, shared identity through material culture, indigeneity and disability as ways of knowing and being, tactile, handmade and colorful material objects are symbols of care, kin, and a culture. Can you each speak about how these projects came about? Really interested to know, to hear about your respective collaborations with community members and your thoughts around the themes of embodiment and materiality in creating these vibrant photos. So that's a question directed to Whit and Dana. I'm not sure who wants to go first. In terms of responding.
I'll start, I guess, if you don't mind. So thank you everyone for being here. I'm currently situated on the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Salish people, Squamish people, and I'm happy to be here with all of you, as well as happy to be in Vancouver as well. And just to see those exhibition shots, it was lovely to see thinking about, you know, the embodiment of an exhibition space and what you've grouped together. It looks really great. I wish it was coming to Vancouver. I don't know if I'm trying to get it out here, but I think it looks like a great exhibition. Also, I think an important exhibition in terms of this Baroness and how you've linked our works with her and with each other as well. So just thinking about your lovely question, is that, and if I can refer to looking at how those three works are hung. So the two on the outside, oh, thank you. The two on the outside are maybe I'll start with the one in the center, because this is what basically started it all, the whole headdress series. So this was the first original headdress. And you know, I was thinking there was all the politics, there still is the politics of, oops, something's changed in my image here. I'm not sure what's going on. So a bunch of stuff is flashing up on my screen. I'm not sure. Oh, what's happened here?
Oh, Dana, I just moved it to the image that you're talking about.
Okay, sorry, no, it's my situation here. Something's gone. A bit. There, I'm back to seeing everybody. Sorry about that. So, there's the politics of who gets to wear a headdress. And in my culture, actually, they're actually called war bonnets. And they're given for very prestigious and noble reasons why you are given one. Not only in terms of gifting, but in terms of a reward for your good deeds, and sometimes your good deeds in war as well. And so it was all of those. It was with the Tribe Called Red and people wearing them at Chokella, and turning these headdresses into war bonnets, into sort of these fashion things, and playing Indian, dressing up like Indians, all of that narrative. And even sometimes seeing at UBC on Halloween, seeing sort of little Pocahontases and Indians sort of walking by in a distance. And I'm like, what's going on here? Why are people still playing Indian and dressing up like Indians? So that's sort of some of the foundational kind of, I suppose, reactions that I have when I see people dressing up like Indians and also wearing war bonnets. And I like to think that I understand why to want to wear a war bonnet. They're beautiful things, and they're not even they're sort of beyond a thing or an object. They also have their own mana within them. And so when you put one on, and a real one on, you embody its mana as well. And they feel great on. I've worn one, and it wasn't mine, but I tried it on, and it felt it's an amazing feeling like no other. So this was in a response to that, as well as a response to not only the commodification of Indigenous iconography, but whenever, I have on any of my Indigenous jewelry, people feel that they can actually even touch you and your body, and get sort of in your face when you're wearing your stuff, your things. And one woman had reached down into my blouse to pull out some necklaces I was wearing. And, it was actually kind of a violation, and it was very uncomfortable, but she wanted to see what I was wearing. And so this is a response to many things. As usual, my art is, these multiple meanings, multiple entry points, as well as celebrating Indigenous beauty, looking at this. This is sort of like an intertribal image as well. So this is from the collection of myself and my sisters, and thinking about the term, what does cultural belongings mean? What are these things? And once Indigenous beadwork, you know where somebody's from, of course, from the designs on their beadwork. So this was sort of, thinking about that as well in terms of regionality, and where different styles of beadwork come from, and then placing it on top of her as this sort of inverted headdress that's not, on her going down her backside. Women wear headdresses too, both traditionally as well, but generally the long war bonnets that were trailing were generally worn by men, unless there was a female warrior, and there were very powerful and skilled female warriors. So this is commenting on a lot of things, and also thinking about war. I mean, it's not just the First and Second World War. Indian wars, in the United States and into Canada have gone on for a long, long time. And, physical battle, we're like 200 years of warring on this continent, in the United States. So it's making reference to a lot of things, and of course, Indigenous beauty, but also if we think of the figure. So she's not only the lone figure, she's also, has these, I could even call them sometimes even sentient beings with her. So she started it, and then this figure. And then after that, I asked people to bring their own cultural belongings, and that I would take their portraits with their I suppose collections. So the woman Connie to the right, she's made all that work. So she's also a significant beater, and so she makes a lot of barrettes. She makes power regalia for her family, and bags, but mostly barrettes. So those are all barrettes actually that she has on her, and some that are very Northwest Coast, others that are her own styles, and a combination of Okanagan styles with Northwest Coast. And so these are portraits of the makers, as well as portraits of gifts that they have received as well. And I think really, yeah, I always say that, I don't completely always know what I'm doing, and it'll be the art historian or the viewer that'll tell me, what I'm doing in these works and all my works. But I think it's really about agency, agency and cultural, just value, I suppose. How does one value beadwork? As we know, for so long it was relegated, by Western art history into the craft, it was never considered fine art. And so it's, making a comment on that as well.
Thank you for sharing all that, Dana. And yeah, there's so much, you've given us so much to think about there. And I also think too about you're having made these works in, of course, Vancouver, and the history of conceptual photography there. That is, I love how you also term the backlit photograph a firebox, and also so there's that reference to that tradition of photography, but also speaking back to the kind of consumerism which data artists at the time also in their day also spoke, or were also working against, the kind of consumerism and culture. And also thinking too about, yeah, there's an interesting relationship as well between those works and the presentation of the portraits of individuals with their cultural belongings within a museum context too. That is a nice counterpoint. I wonder if you want to say anything more, or perhaps too in the vein of like Vancouver photography, or.
Thank you for the question. And also there's, sometimes I think I'm also a complete contradiction when thinking about the data and say consumer culture and those kind of things, because these light boxes, fireboxes, a light box is extraordinary. They're very costly to make. And so I had taken the first image of the headdress and another larger work, Cultural Belonging, and took them in, large format photography, and then sat on them for about 4 years, because I was so conflicted about, my going into a sort of a masculine art production, how would I be implicated in that? And, is the light box, only designated to the artists who are using it here in Vancouver, and all of these, sort of concerns I had. And had a couple of curators come and look at the work and discuss it. And but then when I sort of just this moment, I thought, I could be making fireboxes. And it released me from all of that. But at the same time, of course, I've been inspired by that work and completely. And photoconceptualism. And I've always been somewhat, as they've called me, especially with my filmmaking, a surrealist. Where I've always thought maybe I'm more of a spiritualist, but not spiritualist in the sense of the, that movement with artists and I can't remember that whole group, but just in terms of indigenous spirit, right? So, so I think the work goes within that terrain. So it's working with these mechanisms of the production of photography, but bringing in a cultural context, I think, is what has happened here.
Thank you for that. Pass it over to Whit. I don't know if you remember the original questions, or I'm sure you have some many things to respond.
Definitely. I remember you sent me a question, so I actually have it open on my phone right now to remind myself. But yeah, so I guess talking about how this project came about. Well, so I started making these things that I call like digital quilt self-portraits during 2020, when it was like, well, you're stuck in the house and everybody's like, oh, what are we going to do at home? And people are, cooking, and people are making bread, and people are like gardening in their window box. And so I really wanted to quilt. I've always wanted to make like large scale quilts and never actually did it because fabric costs money. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. So while I was sitting at home, I was like, well, I have a lot of fabric from past projects and past things. But one of the things that's also been kind of keeping me from really embarking on quilting fully is a few years back, I learned that 7% of the world's landfills and garbage dumps are textiles. And so that bothered me really deeply as somebody who makes costumes and clothing and also does like quilting and crocheting and knitting, and whose practice is actually made of textiles, right? Because I think about how like when we're cutting fabric, or we're cutting yarn, or we're cutting whatever it is, there's like little tiny pieces, right, that get like left over, and then those pieces kind of add up, and you can't always sew them together, you can't always knit them together or crochet them together because some of them are too small to like really grasp. And so in order to avoid making more fabric waste that would end up in another landfill, another garbage dump somewhere, I decided to start making kind of like digital quilts, which are these images that are of actual fabrics that I have. So like if you see the picture that, like this picture, for instance, right? That black and white fabric in the back is an actual fabric that I have in my art studio that I have made clothes out of in the past, but I believe that I had about 12 yards of this. So I had a lot of it. And so I have had clothes, but also like the idea of like wanting to make a quilt with it, but not wanting to create a lot of waste from cutting it up and reshaping it and everything. So instead, what I did was I took a picture of it and I kept manipulating the pictures of the fabric that I already have, so that I'm not buying new fabric and also not cutting it up and creating more waste, but then it allows me to make it as big as I want, right? Like the black and white that's directly behind the image of me in this digital quilt. But then if you look at they're kind of like squares on their side towards the bottom of the quilt, there's 7 of them in a row of these black, like smaller black and white. It's the same exact pattern. It's the same exact fabric, but it's just scaled down and turned on its side instead of like as large as it is behind me in the image. So it allows me to just keep reusing fabric in a way that like actual physical textile art does not allow you to like keep reusing the same fabric and the same things like over and over, because once you use it, it's kind of done, right? Like it's gone, you did it already. So that's really what kind of got me into the digital quilts itself. But then also additionally, by doing things with images, it allows me to do more ridiculous things that like I can't necessarily do with like in person with physical art all the time, right? Because I can't be there like pointing and standing there all day, holding up yarn and throwing it or whatever, having people throw it at me. So yeah, so it allows me space for accessibility also, because that way I don't have to like I'm not going out to a gallery to show my artwork, which is like sometimes can be weary on my physical body. But also I know for a lot of other disabled artists and art patrons, folks can't always get to a gallery. And sometimes when we get to the gallery itself is very inaccessible, and that could add more strain or pain or, both physically and mentally. And so by creating these digital quilts, it allows me to post my artwork online and show it on my website in ways that make it more accessible, both physically and also financially, right, for folks who may not be able to afford museum or gallery expenses, or even just traveling to a museum or a gallery. So those are definitely thoughts that came to me when I was creating this project, and even when I just started with the digital quilts. But in addition to that, it also allows me to bring in my practice in incorporating like yarn into everything. And so like in the before times, before the pandemic, if I was showing things in person, there would also be, so like this image here with Kenwin, you see these yarn circles in purple, green, yellow, and red. And so I would often have things like that in person for folks to just grab or touch for two reasons. One, so that they can feel what the art is actually made out of, but then like so that they can be part of the art themselves, like as the like they're now performing as the art because they're touching part of what made the art, or they're remanipulating whatever it is. Like I may leave it there and then people might come and like restack it or throw it around or whatever. And so I would allow that, you know, beforehand. And so that's part of the reason why I incorporated it into these, so that it's also like the idea of just kind of manipulating those things is in the image, even though folks can't necessarily do it in person. But in the in-person installation, there are actually still some of these. Some of the objects are there on the floor. So it kind of makes the curator into part of the performance of the thing itself. And so for this in particular, I actually did create a quilt, a physical quilt. And all of the fabric that's there, none of it was wasted. So all of the pieces were cut like directly to the size and put together. So the fabric that's flanking it on either side, like the gray gradients, none of those were cut in a way that would waste any of it. Those were all just sewn together. And then the middle section was also sewn together in a way that wouldn't, so that there wasn't any that was wasted. And like the black and white fabric that you see around the edges and on the sleeve that's holding it up is also the black and white fabric that's used in the images, for the background of a lot of the images. Like that's the actual fabric, which was also cut in a way that wouldn't waste any of it or have any of it sent to a landfill. Yeah, I don't know, embodiment and materiality is super important to my work, both for the purposes of making my artwork accessible to me as a disabled person, but also to fellow disabled and chronically ill people who are patrons of the arts. Additionally, materiality is important to me. And so a lot of my work incorporates objects that can actually be felt or touched by people because I experience vision issues and sometimes I can't see like at all. And so because I experience like this intermittent loss of vision, I create artwork that people who also experience vision loss and blindness can also engage with my work. So it becomes a different work for them altogether. So usually what happens in the arts is a piece is created for people who have vision to interact with, and then people who don't have vision or who have limited vision can't interact with that work unless it's synthesized through another person. So pretty much by me creating actual tactile things, it allows me to create a completely different work that a person who has vision loss can experience in a way that people who can see the work won't be able to necessarily, I mean, like you'll be able to touch it, but it's a completely different artistic experience. And so it's created with folks in mind who can't necessarily see the visual work or who may have difficulty with seeing the visual work. But it also gives me a space to be able to interact with my work, whether or not I myself am experiencing vision loss or not. Did that answer the question okay, Heather? Did that answer it?
That answered so much and more. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I love
No
thinking
problem.
too about like you mentioned how of course, some of your peers, the portraits are of your peers as well. And I don't know, I imagine because it's COVID too, and that I don't know where they all live, but maybe I was thinking too, it's really a nice reflection of this idea of materiality of an embodiment of this way of working that creating these digital quilts has also enables this kind of collaboration um, with peers that maybe, I don't know, does it happen entirely in digital space and or facilitates that kind of collaboration too, which is a really interesting way to think about embodiment well at any time, but adds there's extra relevance in these kind of COVID times. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I meant to also share that the 4 people who are also in the images with me are also disabled and chronically ill artists. And so I invited them to be a part of this project as well and to collaborate with me. So all of the images of them are selfies, photos that they've taken of themselves, to include their work as well, because of the inaccessibility of that the art world has kind of presented to disabled and chronically ill artists during the pandemic. And so kind of to try to challenge that a little bit, I invited folks who also are disabled and chronically ill to be a part of the work with me.
Thank you so much for that, Whit. Of course, there's so much more that I'd love to talk with both of you about, but I think in the interest of time, we'll pose a question now to Cindy and Sheila. So, Cindy and Sheila, both of you use found objects and materials in your sculptural installation and photographic work, respectively, that evoke the body in myriad ways. How did your choices of objects and materials inform your process and these works, which are so very much grounded in the body and materiality? Not sure who wants to answer first, Sheila or Cindy. I can't see either of you right now in the, wait, I gotta click through. There you are, yeah. Cindy, you're unmuted. Do you wanna go?
Okay, sure. Thanks for your question, Heather. It's a real pleasure to be part of this exhibition with these other great artists. It's just, it's such an honor to be here. So thank you for your great historical work and the work of the gallery putting on this exhibition. I think it's a really important one and timely. Yeah, so I'll address this question of found objects. I have a fairly long history of working with medical artifacts and objects, specifically because they implicate the body and because of the medical discourses that they're part of, which I think are ripe for all kinds of investigations and need to be seen as a cultural discourse that needs to be sort of critiqued, actually. So my past works have included medical examination tables and furniture, anatomical charts, medical encyclopedias, and so forth. In the case of this new work that I did at QEG, for QEG, and specifically due to the dates associated with the Baroness Elsa and her feelings about the war and the body, I was drawn to working with a series of World War I medical splints. It's a series of splints I had collected quite a while ago. And it just sort of seemed like this was the time to use them. I store these things and then I get inspired to work on them and use them and ask new questions of them. And this exhibit seemed like the right time to do that. These medical splints were specifically designed at the time of World War I, and they were intended to take wounded soldiers and civilians off the fields and off the trenches. And in fact, they did save lives. Of course, World War I was much bloodier and deadlier than anyone could have imagined. 20 million people lost their lives, 25 million were injured. So I was quite drawn to the fact that these then were artifacts that were invented specifically for mutilated bodies. So that was sort of a new world order that was playing itself out in horrifying ways. And so I knew that when I chose to work with them, that they were highly charged and filled with all kinds of traumas. And so I started to work with the wax pigments with them as a way to sort of bring back to these artifacts some history of bodily wounds and trauma. And in that process, starting to apply these waxes, I started to read about the Baroness herself, had this wish to create a death mask upon her passing, and how she asked her friend to come in and create this death mask, sort of commission her, I guess. And I thought that was really interesting because I too, in my work, wanted to sort of highlight this idea of the passage of flesh being really important to sort of document and show evidence of how sort of the flesh was sort of still clinging, that it's about bruising, it's about how the body gets infections, gets scrapes and gashes. And so this work and these artifacts were very much to me about exposing wound culture and how trauma registers on the body. And so that was my aim in this piece, was to articulate then this sort of biological historicity of individuals, of bodies. So that's sort of my response to why I chose these objects at this particular time, and sort of the dialogues in my head that I wanted to create in this new piece.
And I guess I should say that the name of your installation is Shell Shock, which of course is a direct reference to World War I and the continued way that it would affect people afterwards. And it's also interesting, we thinking about like these suspended, the suspended. I'm sorry, I forgot the word. The metal structures, the splints that are suspended, and that they're installed opposite some of Baroness Elsa's like small objects that are also suspended, little pieces of metal. That's a nice conversation in the gallery, but also thinking about, yeah, these shadows, and of course they evoke the people who were injured, but they also evoke, in large part, feminized labor of care of the field nurses, and people who would care for soldiers afterwards, and also just thinking about how this installation resonates in our present moment as well, like not only being historically reflective, but if you have any thoughts on just in terms of like thinking about care and feminized labor of care right now with what's going on in COVID and so forth.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I'll address the issue of the shadows first of all, because I think when you enter into the gallery and the photography stops, I mean, these shadows go up over 30 feet and sort of span out too. And I was, again, I started becoming fascinated with shadows in relationship to this work. At the same time, I'm reading how dada artists were obsessed over shadows. They often had long conversations about their significance, and they wanted it like a key component to creating new artworks during the time when they felt like logic had become unhinged, as they called it during the war. This sort of, this rationality had become gone sort of berserk. And in fact, that shadows were sort of a sign of this sort of stalking of the human condition. I think that's a direct quote from either Man Ray or Duchamp, where it's becomes almost the subject as opposed to sort of an after effect itself. So for me, the idea of having these splints become these menacing figures that go up 30 feet high on the wall was also a way to kind of talk about the fleeting nature of life. I saw it as sort of a choreography, a dance going on here with death. These are all things that I wanted to also bring to the work, and these objects that I was choosing to work with. Also, I mean, this gets back also to Whit was talking about in terms of embodied experience. You know, I was very aware, like, you know, I kept trying these on myself. Where does this fit on my knee? Where does this fit on my shoulder? I was taking photographs of other people using them. I could have seen the Baroness Elsa performing with them. You know, I saw them as also highly performative. But then I also was thinking about the soldiers who would then have become, you know, their bodies would have been inserted in these, and what it was, trench warfare was like, how they would, you know, be subjected to these endless gases, these toxic mustard gases and new types of chlorine gases that were invented during the wartime. And, you know, not only the smells, but the pains, the sitting and waiting in the trenches for long periods of time, how just an incredibly, just a horrific experience that must have been. And at the same time, you know, I'd have people come into my studio or, you know, seeing this work as it's being developed, and they're just like, yeah, Cindy, this is so dark, you know, like, why are you doing this? This is just so, you know. And I mean, I kept on thinking, and my answer was always, well, you know, we're having a global pandemic and a health crisis going on right now, where all kinds of bodies around the world are in all kinds of trauma and psychological turmoil. Hospitals are filled to the brink. And so and you know, all kinds of new devices are being invented to keep bodies alive. And, you know, there's all kinds of sick bodies around us right now requiring urgent and very labor intensive care. So I was sort of thinking, it's not just about me going into the past, but it's me sort of learning about this idea of shattered notions of the body, of subjectivity, of trauma, of shock, and these ruptures that we're living in now, kind of questioning, where are we going in the future? Also, during this time of climate crises, that the stage that we're in and facing this cycle of mass extinctions, this, you know, the world is literally, you know, is it sort of unhinged? And can these shadows and what I could learn from the data artists actually begin to create a space where there's just so many unknowns, and these great unknowns and their weight is sort of needs to take up a lot of space. It sort of makes sense that we're in this period right now. So I sort of felt comfortable of, you know, working with that sort of dance of death play to bring to my installation.
Thank you, Cindy, for all that. There's so much to think about, and I'm excited for people to come and experience it. I'll find Sheila. There's Sheila. You, not sure if you remember the question about found objects, the materials in your photographic works and assemblages.
Yeah, thanks so much for the question, Heather, and also thank you for including the work. And I mean, honestly, like for even like help making me aware of the Baroness Elsa, because it just is such a stark reminder of like how history gets told, and you know, who is left out of narratives and who is included, and the fact that I had no idea that she, you know, about her body of work just like speaks to, you know, that very kind of systemic problem. So yeah, I just feel really grateful to be here with all these great artists. Thank you guys, and to be able to kind of be in conversation. So in relation to the question, I guess like I'm thinking about the materials that I use tend to be the materials that are at hand, you know, like there's like something that I think is really important about like what's available. And I think maybe that's like the Dada sort of idea of like, you know, anything can be, you know, an art material. But even though they may have said that, you know, it took like a lot of other people, you know, feminism, et cetera, sort of kind of challenging, you know, who exactly has dominion over what equals an art, you know, material. So I feel like a lot of the materials, it's almost like, reminds me a little bit of like a Margaret Atwood poem where she talks about like collecting a day, all the things of a day, like burrs on your clothes. I feel like some of the materials that I collect or that I use are kind of the like detritus of a day, like a, you know, my body moving through space and time and the things that I come in contact with. So, you know, a lot of the materials like range from the kind of photographs that are printed on felt, and there's often text or maybe like a plant that was in, you know, season at the time, or I just made something yesterday. This semester has been killing me, so but I put something down in the studio that is like an old shirt of my wife Danny's, and like I wanted that because it, you know, it reminds me of her. It's one of the things that is available, and I really appreciate this idea of like, you know, making work out of what's available. And then I also think a lot about like how do you hold tension, you know, like how do you have like a kind of, I mean, I love this idea that Whit brought up of like, you know, like our bodily experience, because I also want to think about like how do you hold tension in a work and how does your body respond to that. And so I feel like there's like a lot of different registers of materials. Like there's plexiglass holding together all of these like material, like the kinds of materials I was just talking about, like an old saddle that somebody gifted me, you know, the felted photograph, the walking prints that are there, but those are sandwiched between, you know, plexi and on these concrete wedges and balanced, you know, sort of precariously. And I think that that's part of like my kind of material investigation ongoing, which is like, how do I like pull from these different registers? And like, and I think that maybe Donna like brought this up in terms of like, do I really want to use the light box, you know, or firebox? But it's like, can I use some of the tropes of like, you know, minimalism that's so like over, you know, saturated with kind of white, you know, male machismo? Can I like pull some of that and like use that sort of material language, formal language within my work to like offer something new, you know, or something that speaks to my own experience, you know? So and I think that a lot of the work is about, I mean, it's about my family, you know, it's about my lover, my wife, it's about my daughter, it's about like connection. And so a lot of these materials are kind of like specific to them, or they exist as these materials that I'm hoping kind of like create, yeah, some kind of tension, some kind of sense of like a precarity, like a useful sort of tension, I guess.
Sheila, thank you. Can you tell us more about what you call walking prints? Because I think that's really, really
Yeah. Yeah,
doing
it's funny. Like when you sent that question, I was like, oh gosh, is walking prints a thing? You know, like I feel like I teach photo, so, and I just feel, and I'm sure that many of you who just being involved in the art world, it's like, you know, imposter syndrome, all that, like, I'm like, is that really a thing in photo, walking prints? You know, I don't know. No, it isn't. But you can see that a lot of the images there that are kind of these kind of warm tones are images that are generated by me taking fiber photo paper, and like binding it to my feet, and then just like walking for a day, and then developing it, you know, at the end of the day. And I think it's like very much like a kind of like, you know, you like grow up, or I went through school and it was like Henri Cartier-Bresson, the decisive moment, you know, there's a lot of like tropes of photography, you know, the photograph is a two-dimensional thing. It has a certain kind of aura, and I've just always wanted to like mess with that. Like, I almost like want to get inside the photo. I just want to use it as like some kind of like performative medium, you know, and find a way to use this material that speaks to truth. You know, it's like the photo equals some kind of truth, but like, how can I like repopulate that with, you know, my own experience, I guess, embodied experience. So So those walking prints that you see are like stitched together on my sewing machine and just like added into the kind of material cauldron, cauldron / collage of the work.
Yeah, I love the way too that, of course, if they're strapped to your feet, the way that they register not only your movements, but they become distressed. The material becomes like worn,
Yeah.
scuffed. Sometimes you see holes. I don't know. Yeah, people will be able to see that when they come experience the show. The way that you know, you can really get up close and get a sense of the material itself that is the support for like photography, but also that has been this kind of support, an index of your body's activities, and something really also specific to the way that you've installed the work is, the way that you have them on angles and, as you said, balanced, and there's this precarity and that tension, but also that you invite, by having them kind of the way you have them angled on these concrete supports, you're also inviting people to peek behind and to look at the, typically the side of a we see, but I love how you invite people to glimpse behind, and sometimes that's where you find like little scrawled messages and other kinds of
that's like, I guess like that's like another, because I feel like every photo, every two-dimensional image that you see has like some kind of other history inscribed into it, you know what I mean? And it's like something that we are either oblivious to or don't allow ourselves to think about. And so yeah, I love like this idea of like making a typically one-dimensional sort of object become, something to be encountered front and back. Yeah, thanks, Heather.
Thank you. Well, I know that, Fiona, I don't know if you registered any questions that anyone's posed in the chat, or if any of the artists have questions for one another.
Just lots of great comments, from everyone about each other's artworks, which is really awesome to see. So we super appreciate those comments.
Yeah, I want to scroll through the chat later. Yeah.
I'll copy and paste it, or I'll go and send it to you. Yeah.
Well, I feel like this conversation is very much, like a great starting point, and I really hope that you all will have an opportunity to experience the exhibition in person, perhaps when it goes to Sackville, or I don't know, perhaps, I mean, there still are 2 months that it's here at QAG, and I really hope that today's conversation catalyzes people to come and see the exhibition in person. But yeah, with so much generous reflections that you've offered to people today, thank you so much. And myself also, I'm really appreciative to get to speak with you all together like this. And I also wanted to, because I know she's also in the audience, Carol Sawyer, a shout out to Carol Sawyer. Sheila, when you commented about being made aware of Baroness Elsa, I wanted to also signal that it was Carol Sawyer who, in working with her on her exhibition, which the Natalie Bretschneider Archive, which was shown here in 2016, it was Carol who introduced me to the Baroness Elsa, and then I started to see all kinds of information on the internet about Baroness Elsa. So it was through working with Carol that seeded the idea for this exhibition. So thank you, Carol, there.
Great.
And,
well, maybe we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you, Whit. That was just a pleasure to listen to, and so informative and so thoughtful. And I really appreciated everyone's comments in the chat and responses to Whit's prompt. My brain's going just in lots of different directions, and I can't wait to talk to all the visitors that come in about these things. So thank you. And so I'll let folks go now, but I hope everyone has a really lovely rest of your Thursday afternoon, and Dana, the rest of your Thursday morning.
Okay, great. Thank you all.
Thank
Take
you so
care.
much. Bye, everyone.
Bye.